Hello, everyone. It's Donelle McAdams and Megan here. And tonight we're going to do a question and answer. And so we have not looked since we tried it last week and we didn't get any submissions. We did get a couple, which I'm going to address the ones I saw. But if you have a question, go ahead and submit it there, and we will try to catch it as it's going through the feed and answer those questions. So understand that we might have to stop for a second and gather up some supplies or whatever, but we're going to do the best we can. So I'm going to go ahead to start this evening showing you what I've shown you several times before, but I think it's always good to review. And that is keeping this area of your machine clean so that you get good stitches. And the reason I say that is you think, oh, there's not a lot down there. And when you open it up, it may not look like a lot. But honestly, anything that is inhibiting this smooth flow of your threads or your bobbin or your bobbin case is going to make a difference. So I'm using an M7 from Janome. And when I open up this bottom, it's a matter of touching a button on my machine and it opens that up and I can just take this out. At this point, so that you may see better, I'm going to go ahead and take my foot off. And one of the places that you really want to check, especially if you're doing like heavier, or I shouldn't say heavier, but flannel and some of those fabrics that are going to give you more lint, is right in here. Now I'm just using my tweezers there to get anything out of there because it's unbelievable how much stuff you will have build up. So there's just a little bit of that fluff. And then the rest of the things, I like to just use a paintbrush, obviously a paintbrush that's not been used. And I'm just going to go around and see what I can get out of there, go back through there. Now this brush was clean when I just started that a couple seconds ago. What do you think? Kind of a mess. I like to use a brush cleaner, and this is just something that you can pick up at the dollar store. I do have them available on my website, but you can see just running that around on that, you can just get that lint right out of there and clean your brush back up too. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my bobbin out. This is my what's called my hook here. Actually, it's the bobbin case part. The hook is what's down here. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean out that lint. Again, surprise, surprise. I hate to tell you guys this, but I just cleaned this out last night. You're going to find out why it's so dirty here when I talk about what I've been doing. So look at that. This was just last evening I cleaned this out. And so again, we'll just go around here and that just pulls that right off of there. So after I've got my brush clean, I'm going to go back again because I don't want to leave anything in there that I shouldn't have. Let's unthread that needle so we've got that thread out of the way. Now your machine may not open up like this. It may open up in the front. You know, you may have to use some screws to get it out. Whatever, you can get in there. Don't be too aggressive because you don't want to move anything to a position it's not supposed to be in. This little guy over here, I'm always very gentle. That's my thread cutter. I don't want to get in there and I want the lint out, but I don't want to reposition anything. Now, whether you have this type of a basket that holds, this is again the hook, holds your bobbin case, or you have one that slips in the front, like you open up down here in the front and you push it in. This little ridge that's right there, right here, can collect stuff, junk, whatever you want to call it. So I just take the edge of my screwdriver and run that right around there. And I also want to put a little spot of lubricant on either side of that hook. Now, I like to use what's called Tri-Flow Superior Lubricant because this is not gummy. It evaporates. It does not collect and get gummy and then be nasty in the end. So think of this versus the look of, like, I don't know, Vaseline petroleum jelly or something like that. But this is going to be just a very pure and clean. And so I'm just going to put one drop right there, and one drop over here. And then right here in the middle, there is a felt right there. And I put one drop on that. Now, how often do you do this? Depends on how often you sew. Cleaning, probably more than putting that lubricant in there. But I know that you're probably going to say, my machine says not to oil it. I get it.
I was going to say, good, because that's what Carrie was just asking, is that it says you're not supposed to. So
right.
Why are you doing it?
I get it. I have been a sewing machine repair person for a number of years, 40, and I understand that. However, I will tell you that this will, number one, make your machine sew smoother, and it will quiet it down. So all you have used is one drop on either side of that hook and one drop in the center. Now, what I was doing while I was talking was just getting the lint out of this area also by taking this brush, going around here, cleaning all this out, and getting that lint free.
So Donna said she's heard your trick with this oil before, and she used it on her Baby Lock Soprano and her Viking Opal, and it made a huge difference.
And I'm sure she means for the positive. She probably wouldn't share it if it wasn't, and it does make a big difference.
Carolyn also just shared, you need to know what machines do need oil, because not all of them need it. So make sure that you know what your machine needs.
Well, most all of them, with this being a carbon fiber. This is not plastic. This is a carbon fiber. And this piece, after a long time of sitting in that little rim and running around there, because there's so much friction there, this gets, I'm going to use the word dry. It doesn't really dry out, but it just gets to the point where we get chatter because they don't like each other anymore. So putting just that one little drop there and there is going to be a big difference. I'm just telling you, it works. Okay.
What kind of oil do you recommend again?
Okay, you could use a sewing machine oil, or I like to use this, what's called Tri-Flow lubricant. And you can probably find it at your better hardware stores, maybe your hometown hardwares versus the big box. I do have it for sale on my website. You can see my little tubing that comes with it, and that allows you to get just that one drop. This is the oil that I use on my sergers also. So it's just really a good, clean oil. Now this, and you don't want anything to spray in there. And don't ever use WD-40, okay? Now, this has to be put back in there just right. So when you look at this, you probably, no matter what brand machine you have, you probably have this little opening, like it's like a U shape. Let me pull it back like that. And right here, there is a piece that this needs to set up against there. Now, if you have one that pushes in the front, again, there's going to be only one way that fits in there correctly. And you're going to want to, if you don't disassemble it and watch for that, you're going to want to look at your instructions to see. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this right back in there, kind of like I'm shoveling it. Okay. And I'm going to set that in there. And obviously it's not in there correctly. So I'm going to just kind of real gently get that so that it sits in that ridge. And if you look right there, you can see that's up against there. And you're going to have a little bit of movement, just a little bit. But you want to make sure it's sitting right in that ridge and right in the ridge there. Now, here's the secret. If you're just kind of new to this, the only thing that could damage anything right now at this point is if you left your needle in when you tried to do this. And so what I want you to do at this point, if you're not sure, is just rotate your hand wheel back and forth to make sure that everybody's happy. Okay? Nobody's jumping out of their spot, anything like that. And once you've checked that out, then you could go ahead and put your needle back in. Because like I said, the only thing that could damage something is that needle. And so if you've taken the needle out, it's not going to come down here and pierce this. Okay? So you can see I've got nice, clean channels on my feed teeth. And those will fill up and get dirty and nasty if you don't take care of them. Honestly, I'm going to tell you this is the truth. This was like, seriously, I would say 30 years ago. I had a lady come in and this was so packed and pushed down that she was able to pick that out of there, and she brought it in and said she needed a new felt pad for her feed teeth. And I all but busted out laughing because that had been in there so long that it's been done what we call felted, which is when you have pressure and felted fibers that are pushed together. So jokingly, she thought she needed a new pad for that. So make sure you keep that good and clean. All that area now is ready, and we're just going to put this back in.
Before you put it back in, we did have a question. Can you use canned air?
The best way to say that is if it's a canned air that you can use a nozzle on, and you can get most of it out this way, okay? Because canned air is really going to push it down farther into your machine. So I hesitate to say yes. I would rather you get those little vacuums that you can hook to your big vac. I mean, it's a little set of tools. Megan, open that door there and see if it's right there. Megan, that right there, that door. There it is. So this is a little set right here that I have. And you can see that there is an adapter that I can put on my regular machine. And then I've got little adapters like this. This is the one I use the most. You've seen that before on your big one. But this is just a little adaptation set, and you can put it right down there. That's the best thing to do after you have used that to clean it out. Okay, any other questions on cleaning?
Not necessarily on cleaning, but we do have one. Oh, well, first of all, there was one. That pink little pad you had. What was that called, and where can they get
This
that
is
again?
just a brush cleaner. Now, I do have some on my website. They may not look exactly like this that will do the same thing. But this is kind of one of those things you can find in the cosmetics. It's a makeup brush cleaner, but it works better than this. I've never used it for makeup. And it just pulls that out and gets that all nice and clean.
And then Dee asks, what have you been working on that you need to clean it out from last night when you said you had to clean it last night?
Okay, so I'll quickly tell you. I was helping my daughter achieve the impossible. Would you say that, Megan? She's not going to answer. She's keeping her mouth shut. Megan does quilts, does t-shirt quilts. So for those of you that aren't familiar, that's where you just take all your t-shirts, you put a lining on the back and put them together. Only she adds a bunch of fussy stuff, and they're really, they're beautiful. And then she'll probably find a picture and I can show you. But anyway, she was under the gun because she thought she had another week. And actually this student graduated, and we got open house. Just a moment. They're in the car. We had their open house was today. Well, she found that out on about Thursday, I think. And so we were under the gun. So she had to get that together, and then it needed to be quilted. Well, our quilter that does our long arm quilting, or hers on her obviously long arm machine, is out of town until Tuesday, I think it was. And so, Mom, will you quilt it was the next thing. So yes, Mom quilted it. This is the t-shirt quilt here. And I used Donna McCauley's winding way. I say wandering. I'm sorry. Winding way. I wish I could get you a bigger picture, but that was quilted with I don't know how many passes back and forth across there. And I obviously used my suspension system, and I quilted it in about 4.5 hours and 7 bobbins of thread. And yeah, we finally got it finished. She delivered it at 11:30, and I think the open house was at 1. So we got that all finished, and it is almost queen size, I think.
Yes. Which goes to Joyce's question off of YouTube. How do you quilt with flannel on the front and back?
Okay, so this particular quilt that I was quilting had flannel on the back. And I will tell you, when I first started, I was panicked because it did give me a little resistance. But one thing that I did immediately was I repolished my mat and my table. So with the mat on the table, I repolished that all again, kept, just getting it so super, super slick. It was pretty slick to start with, but not enough for the flannel. When you have flannel on the back and the front, the key on the front, and I'm telling you from experience, okay, is more stable tape. Because Megan knows I was about to go crazy last night. And that was just because of the fact that I only had the corners stable taped on my winding way template. So when I put more on, and I'm sure that will make a huge difference with flannel, the more stable tape you have, the more grip you have. So definitely stable tape. And I don't think you'll have any other problem other than the fact that you want to make sure you're using the right bat. You've got the bat position so that it has the top and the bottom in the correct position. Because when you're using a bat, let me find one here. There is a right and a wrong side, okay? This bat right here, the way you're going to find the right and the wrong side is to take a straight pin and push down through. If it doesn't want to go, you see how that pin doesn't really want to go? Flip it over and see if it likes it better this way. And you can see that it does. Now make sure that you have a pen, a straight pen that is sharp. If it doesn't want to go on either side, you probably don't have a very sharp straight pen. So the key is the one that it goes through smoother, that's the top side. Now the other little trick is they say it's dimples up and pimples down. I remember that, down with pimples, okay? Because none of us want those. So down is pimples down. And this worked on this because this has dimples. You can see the dimples there. And if I turn this over, you can kind of see these raised little pimples. So this doesn't really want to go through that pimpled side. And this goes just fine. So how does that matter in what question she asked about smoother quilting? Well, if you're using flannel on both sides and the needle doesn't want to go through, then it's going to give you a resistance that was not expected. Now, some of you are like, I have never heard this before in my entire life, and I have been quilting for a long, long time. Me too. It's probably only been about a year since I heard this, and I try to share it with everybody because it does make it easier. Okay, so just remember the resistance, the needle, you want it to go through easily, and that should be from the dimple side. The pimple side should be the one that goes down. Okay.
Okay, hold on. The questions are coming in.
Perfect.
Linda also wants to know, did you stabilize it? Did you baste it? How did you do that? Was it with pins or stitching?
So remember, it's about queen size because that we used a queen plus batting and we didn't have a whole lot left over. So Megan and I use the pool noodle method. If I had a quilt here, I would actually show it to you right now, but we don't have one ready to do that with. But it's 3 pool noodles. We had 6 because we had to tape them together. Okay. And so the pool noodles, if you want to grab one of them, Megan, that's taped, that will help me.
That's taped?
This taped.
The big one?
Yes, please. So what if you Google pool, Pool, noodle quilting, you'll probably find it in several different places. Now, I have kind of cleaned up the method because they have you taking pool noodles and actually putting pipe fittings in between them. I actually just take the pool noodles, put them together, and gray tape them together, duct tape them together like this. And so some pool noodles are narrower than this, and this one, either way is fine. And the cool part of it, I normally use flathead pens when I do this, is I'm going to explain it here in a second, but when you're putting your fabric around it, you can just pen right into the noodle. And so it's very easy to work with. So at about 9:30 last night, we got started on this. Megan and I put that pool noodles out. We have 3 sets. If I don't need it that big, I take that tape off because those are 10 foot long. They're each 5 foot, so it makes 10 feet. So you take that and you're going to lay down your backing right side down. You're going to pull it around the pool noodle and pin it in place, and then roll up your backing. Put another pin to hold it, lay it aside. Put your batting down right side up. Repeat the process, pull it around this way and put it right, the pins on the top. And then the next layer is you're going to take your top, put it right side up and wrap it around and get it started with your pins and roll that up. And then you simply lay those 3 pool noodles side by side by side. So I got my backing here closest to me. I got my batting in the middle, and I've got my top here. And so then all I do is I start by pulling out a layer of my backing, a layer of my batting, a layer of the top, and I get those all even where I want them across the top. And I actually spray basted. So to answer the person that asked about basting, I'm a spray baster. And so you can just roll it over there. You can roll it over, do your spray, take the next layer, do your spray, and then smooth it all out and then pull it back. This is my favorite spray basting. It's Quilt Basting Spray by June Taylor. This one, as Megan handed it to me, she said, "It's almost empty, Mom." I said, "I'm not going to spray it." But you can see I have no nasty all over that nozzle like some of them are. This is safe for your machine. I do encourage you, if you have the opportunity to do it outside, we're in the barn, and wear a mask, especially if you have allergies. But this one does not have any smells. I have allergies bad. I didn't have any problem with it. Okay. So that is the way that I put it together. And I did not have one pucker, top or bottom, when I was finished. And that was because I was smoothing it out, spraying it as I go, and then you've got it all together.
And Dale's asking, doesn't the spray make it sticky? But yes, because you want it to stick together. That's what it makes sticky.
It only makes it sticky. That stuff washes out. It has been perfect. I have never had a minute's problem with it. It does not make my needle gummy or anything like that. So I highly recommend it. And I honestly tell you, I would not be in this business if it weren't for spray basting. That's just the truth. I wouldn't be in this business because I'm not one that's going to deal with those pens. And we timed it last night, and being a queen size from side to side, the winding way is a 5x5 temp or a 5x5 design. It took me 9 minutes for each pass across there, because all I did was position it the way I wanted it, did the design, and then flipped the template around and moved the other way.
Did it make your needle gummy at all?
No, it does not gum up your needle at all. No problems with that whatsoever.
Okay, so somebody asked, if I put a label on, or what you use for label. I personally don't put labels on because they're for customers, not necessarily loved ones. What would you use though if you want to do you have any recommendations on?
One of the coolest ways that I've seen to do a quilt label is to, depending on how you're doing your binding, is to do a folded piece of fabric in a triangle. So in other words, if this is the corner of my quilt, you would have a folded piece of fabric that you either wrote on or you embroidered on, and it went as a triangle in that corner. And so it gets stitched into your binding as you're stitching your binding on, or stitched into your binding as you're hand stitching it on. So either way, it gets hooked in there. Now you can decide whether you want to stitch down that fold or not, but that fold's not going to hurt anything because it's, it's a folded fabric. A lot of people, and can you get that picture again, Megan, of your quilt? Oh, she's got it here.
I do.
I want to show them something.
Because this is another question that came up.
Yeah. So this is another thing that you can do for a label is you can get the printed fabric and you can print it out. Now, I don't know if you can see that very well, but this is this young man's mother and his sister, and it told where they were here. He was a tennis champion, and then this is his whole family. So all of those are pictures that are printed out just by pulling them up. Megan used Canva to get what she wanted, but you can pull them up in like Publisher or whatever. As long as you save them as a JPEG, then you don't have any problem and you can print them. What paper was yours?
Mine was a June Taylor paper.
Okay, she used the June Taylor paper. It's transfer paper. A lot of your quilt stores will have this. If they don't, they'd probably get it for you. And that way you could do your label that way if you wanted.
So I also wanted you to see that somebody asked, how do you quilt around applique?
Yeah.
And so this is an applique, but it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah. And so what I did here is I did not want to quilt through these pieces. So when I got here, you can see I ended my winding way. And on this one, because it was just a small piece, I actually just followed the design in it with straight lines. So on the back, this kind of looks like a cross hatching through that one because I wanted that stitched down. Then this one, there's no stitching just on that short piece right there. And I started my winding way here. And then I came back and through this has winding way in it also. So it really takes away from your pictures, but ironically, when you stitch through, you want to get me something else there, Megan? When you stitch through like screen printing, like for example, this one right here, there we go. Like this one right here, it doesn't take away from that because it's not like you're sewing through someone's face. Okay.
And we were trying to decide black, white, what color thread. Oh my goodness, it was the hardest decision, but we decided gray, and actually the gray kind of just blended with everything. It disappeared.
It's way cool. I will remember this for a long, long time because even on like that blue or that purple, it just kind of blended in. It doesn't look white. It doesn't look gray. It just kind of fills in. On the green, pretty much the same way. And in fact, when I went to do the binding, because I took the binding from the front, the outer border we allowed extra, and I took it to the back, and I used my Quick Easy Miter binding tool that many of you have probably seen. And when I took it to the back, I said, you know what? This blends in with that red so well. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this down with that gray also. And you can't see a thing on that edge. You can't see any of it. So
we had a question. I don't know if it necessarily will pertain to this kind of quilting, but it was, when you quilt, do you start the middle and work out? Do you start left or right, up or down? What's the best way to do with quilting?
That's a great question. And on this particular quilt, I thought I would start in the middle and work down and then turn it around and go the other way. Now, remember, I'm using my suspension system. I can honestly tell you, I started at the bottom of the quilt and then worked my way up to the middle. and then worked around those pictures, which were a little bit above the middle. And then, believe it or not, this sounds so crazy, I switched the direction and went from side to side lengthwise this way. You'll never know when you look at it how it was actually quilted, because I was working side to side, and then I switched because that made less fabric in here, and I worked from side to side in this way. So in other words, I was pulling the quilt towards me as I stitched. And when you have it sprayed, I had no problems with that. Now, I can tell you that there's a lot of, most people would say start in the middle and work out. But I don't know if that actually makes it have to be that way anymore.
Now, what about like your little project when you're using ruler work?
Well, that was ruler work, but when
you're doing like a design.
I understand what you're saying. It's just whatever works for you. Because those of you that took my And Beyond class, most of you probably did all of the circular designs on all of those blocks and then went back and filled in with some of the sashing, and you didn't have any problem with that. So it's whatever. I guess, like I said, most people would say it's from the center out. If you were hand quilting, definitely, but hand is a 4-letter word and I don't do it. So that doesn't really matter. But, I would never spray based, I don't think, something I was going to hand quilt, because I'm sure that would be a real trip. But anyway, if I was hand quilting, I would work from the center out. But in this case, I did not have a problem working basically 2 different directions, to be honest with you.
Okay. Lillian asked that she has watched your Quilt As You Go class. She would like to know, can you quilt as you go with any kind of sashing?
As long as you allow for your fabric on your blocks and you cut your batting larger. So in other words, when we're doing the little narrow one that only has a 1/2 inch, when we put it together, we have a 1/4 inch of batting on this side and a 1/4 inch on this side that comes together to make the 1/2 inch fill. If you were doing 2 inches, you're going to have to divide that. You're going to have 1 inch of batting here and 1 inch of batting on this side, so that when it comes together, it's a whole inch. And that's where I would definitely use heat press batting together. After you have put this in place, I would take a narrow strip, maybe 5/8 inch wide, and put that right down on that batting and press that in place, and that will hold that wider batting together. Because on the 1/2 inch, only having a 1/4 and a 1/4, it's not going to do anything. But when you are putting a whole inch to make it 2-inch sashing, you're going to want that. If you wanted a 4-inch sashing, then you're going to have 2 inches extra batting here and 2 here. So let's think about this. I probably need to get a sheet of paper. Here we go. If we were doing that, so let's say this is our block right here. Maybe I better get something a little bit bigger. So guys, I can sew straight, but I can't draw. So you're going to have to be forgiving on me here. Here we go. So this is our design. And let's just say this is a 12-inch finished block. And over here, we have another 12-inch finished block. So with this being a 12-inch finished, when we start, we are going to need to allow, to make this 4 inches in here, we're going to need to allow at least 2 inches on all sides to be able to do that. And I usually go a 1/2 inch more. So if that's 4.5 inches and this is 12, then you're going to have to start with a 16.5 inch piece of batting and backing to be able to do that. And then you're going to do your work, and then you're going to trim it. Your extra like 2 inches out here would be what your trim is. So hopefully that answers that question.
All right, so I brought a sample over here. Teresa asked, she's quilting a project with many thick seam allowances. If I press them open, in your opinion, can I stitch them in the ditch of those open seams, or will that weaken the seam? I didn't know if a visual would help.
I don't know for sure how to answer that, but yes, it will weaken the seam. So what my recommendation, if you are a template quilter, which you probably are, or you would not be here, is you may not want to stitch right in the ditch. You may want to stitch like 1/4 of an inch out from there. Because obviously when you're putting this together, you're going to have a thick seam there to get through all of that. So you wouldn't want this pressed open, because if you press this open, then basically all you've got is stitches and a batting behind it. And that's going to weaken this seam definitely. Now, the other thing I want to tell you, since you asked that, is when you are piecing, if you will use 60 weight thread, you will have finer seams to go over.
Which that's this next question. I'm glad you went to that. Marianne said, how do you go over thicker seam crossings? Because her needle always seems to get stuck there.
Okay, and so that's the answer there for the first part, is to definitely use 60 weight thread, or even 80 weight if you want, but I use 60 weight. And I like the Quilter Select 60 weight. That's Alex Anderson's thread. Comes in quite a few colors. Again, I do carry that on my website. A lot of quilt stores do carry it also. But if you come to, let's say right here is a good place. I got a seam here, I got a seam there, and I got one going there. When I come to that in my quilt, this is really thick right here, because I'm going to answer this in a minute. This also has a stabilizer on the back because that's a t-shirt. But I'm going to show you what I do, because it happened to me in a couple of places, not a lot, but it's definitely on t-shirt quilts that you're going to notice this, is when I come to this, I can get this to happen probably just right now. You can see that, well, I got to set it in ruler work. There we go. You can see that I can move this, and I don't even have a batting or a backing underneath it. But when I get here, do you see my resistance? You can definitely see that resistance. So what I do first is, with my needle down, I use the extra lift. I don't use the button on my machine. I use the extra lift, and I just kind of scooch it. Excuse me, the needle is up. Sorry about that. And I lift it up and I just scooch it a little bit. And then I put my needle down and I see if from there I'm going to be able to continue moving. Usually I can. Now, if by chance this is exactly where a template is and you're trying to follow a template, this can be a little cumbersome. So you kind of want to, give yourself some grace on that. Practice it a little bit, because as you can see, I can still move it now. But when I came up to it before, it was doing this number on me. So it takes a little bit of practice there. Now, let me answer this question. What do you use on the back of a t-shirt?
That has already been asked. Good job.
Okay. I like to use what is called Trico. Tricot. Megan pronounces it tricot, but it's Trico. Just kidding, Megan. And it is something that you can use your scraps on. As you can see, she's got a scrap piece here. There's another piece over here. So when you're filling in on the back of a t-shirt, it doesn't have to be just one piece. You can use those scraps up. But this comes, I think it's like 60 or 72 inches wide.
The one I get is really big. There's two sizes, but the one I liked is the
Is ours the Pellon?
Ours is the Heat and Bond medium.
Okay, can I see the end of the bolt so I can show them? Because this is perfect, because it is a bit of a stretch, but you can see it stabilized the t-shirt. So that's why we like it so well. And
in my also trip, while you're looking at that, I put it on, and then within a couple days, I make sure, or hours even, I try and sew it into fabric. I don't cut all mine first and let them sit because it still does stretch some.
so you can see Heat and Bond Fusibles. And this one on the end, it is the medium weight, just like she said. So I wish you can see it a little bit right there. Okay, there's the Trico Heat and Bond medium weight iron-on fusible interfacing. Now, here's what you want to know about this stuff. Okay, listen up. It's going to be on the quiz. That stuff shrinks. So you want to pre-wash it before you use it in your project. Now you're probably thinking, what? Pre-wash? You're going to take, and Megan uses like 3 yards at a time. So she pulls off 3 yards of that, puts it in almost hot water. It's got to be a little bit more than warm, and just lets it sit there. Just let it sit there for like 20 minutes because the water is going to get cool anyway. And then take it out. Don't wring it, but kind of drip it. It'll all just kind of fall off anyway. And here in Indiana right now, it's perfect. Just take it outside, put it on a hanger, hang it somewhere. Clotheslines are kind of outdated, but you've probably got some place that you can hang it, throw it over a lawn chair or something like that. And it'll be dry in probably 15, 20 minutes. And that way you can pre-shrink that. So when you go to use it, you're not going to have any issues with it. Now, if by chance you have a press, which is like the where you pull the handle down, oh my gosh, that's the best way to put that stuff on. It just makes it so easy with those t-shirts. Otherwise, you're going to just press because you don't iron that stuff. And never, ever put your iron to the front of one of those t-shirts. The screen printed ones. Don't do that. Okay. Where are we?
Okay. I think I'm going to go back because we have some not necessarily non-quilting ones. Patricia says, do you have any rulers that will work with the Bernina stitch regulator? She's purchased a special foot for that, but unfortunately it only allows ruler work at the front and left side.
I would assume that she has the 72 foot, the number 72 foot. And if you purchase high shank rulers, you shouldn't have any issue. I've done it many times. Okay. So, and the stitch regulator, you can use the Bernina stitch regulator, but you need to have the Sew Steady table that has the cutout for that regulator. Okay, because I don't think you can see here because my table is big because my opening here, but on that there is a place about right this position because that Bernina is only about that big, but there's a place about right here that has a cutout and a special outlet, I'm going to say, for your stitch regulator. So there is an extension cord, so to speak, that will take it so you can plug your stitch regulator in the spot and then bring that regulator around and put it in here, and you can use it that way. So yes, there is. You just need to go to the Sew Steady site and order this table with the stitch regulator adapter.
Marjorie just purchased a new Sew Steady table, yay, with the hole for the BSR.
Right.
Which mode do you recommend?
I don't know what exactly the modes are on there on the Bernina. I would ask Kate Quinn that because Kate sews with the Bernina. So that would be a good question for Kate Quinn.
All right. Donna has asked, I have a manual machine. She's got the Juki TL 200 or 2010Q. When she does ruler work, sometimes she has too much thread building up, causing the thread to break. She has the Westerly ruler foot on, and it's lowered correctly. So what is she doing wrong?
Well, first of all, I have that same machine, and it is awesome for ruler work. I would say, number one, check the weight of your thread if you're having thread buildup. And number two, make sure that you're starting by pulling your thread to the top so that you got control of both of those threads. And if that doesn't help you, then shoot me an email so that we can chat, because I have a couple of shows a year that I sew exclusively on that same machine for the whole event. So that would be the best way to hit that off.
Patsy seems to have rulers that have gotten in the way of her basting spray. So what do you recommend to clean those with?
It's called Get Off. Or you can use what is Goo Gone will work.
Not Windex, though.
Not Windex, because that's going to damage your templates. Let me see, Megan, it should be right in that, right there. No, that's not it. Okay, so I'm supposed to be getting this back in. We haven't had it since October, but it's called Citrus Power Remover. And this is great. I put it right on my rag, I shouldn't say that, my cloth, paper towel, whatever. Put that on that. And then this is also great for hoop cleaning. So if you have a hoop that's got all the buildup of some of the stabilizers and the sticky things that might have gotten on it, this works great on it. And so you can just put that on there and this will just wipe it clean. So this is called Citrus Power Remover, safe on plastics, and removes dried latex paint, drips and splatters, marker, ink, sticker residue, scuff marks, pen, gum, and crayon. Okay, so I should have this back in stock fairly soon.
Dawn dishwashing liquid.
You can try that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not going to be, that's fine. Dawn dishwashing liquid, somebody said, you know.
All right. Amanda has high shank rulers. She's about to purchase a new machine specifically just for ruler work. What machine do you recommend?
Oh, this is hard.
I wish you all could see her face because this is hilarious.
I will tell you, I absolutely love my Janome M7. They do not, I do not get any commissions paid or anything like that. And here's the reason why. That's my space. Okay. It's huge.
The throat space.
The throat space right here. This is big and it's tall. So I can work in here. It's not small, it's big. Now, if you don't want to go to that expense, the machine we were just talking about is about this big of a throat space. And that's that Juki 2010 or TL 2010, the straight stitch quilter machine. And that's what I had before this that I really, really liked. And that's only a straight stitch. And it's probably about, oh, I don't know, a third the price, maybe even less. Now I have several other machines, including other brands that have this almost this big a space, but they don't have this big a space. So it's just, you know, whatever. I can tell you that I really like this particular one for a lot of reasons. It comes with this foot, things like this automatic right here, make it so easy to take care of. It's just, you know, it is what it is. But the first thing I'll tell you, because from my perspective, I owned a quilt store, a brick and mortar store for 35 years, and your dealer is important. Definitely is important. So, you know, that's something you've got to be able to have somebody that's going to support you in what you're doing. Now, I'm going to show you something that goes along with what was just asked, because this was a question from last week. Somebody put on the questions, they wanted to know how to thread the Janome 9450. It's very similar to this one, and I'm going to show you. The threading obviously is done, but it was how do I get my needle threader to work? So I have pulled my thread down through everything, and then it goes right behind this last thread guide. Every single machine on the market has this thread guide. Now, this machine, I'm going to see if I can get you closer here.
Where you want to go?
Okay. There we go. This machine is very, very similar in threading to the 9450. So there is a little, I call it an alligator mouth. You can kind of see if I put my finger behind there that it does kind of look like an alligator. And I'm just going to take that and support that thread in there. And then it just goes to the back. And on the side here, there's a thread cutter. And I'm just going to cut that. The key to the self-threading, or not self-threading, but the definitely easy threading, is that you have to lock your machine before you go any farther. So when you come to the lock, on the screen of this one and on the 9450, there is a skeleton key, and that's the lock. And when I touch that, it puts everything in position. So I'm going to just touch that lock. It put my foot down. And we all know that when the foot's down, the tension is engaged. That's key. So I've got all of that done first. Now, when I go ahead and over here, there is a little button. Pretend it's right here. But there's a little button that all I do is go down, and then I release it, and that threads my machine. Now, one thing I love about this machine is the fact that I said when the foot's down, the thread's engaged in the tension, but when it's threading, it's not. So I still can pull my thread, and then I go ahead and press that lock again, and it unlocks. And now I have a long enough thread in my fingers that I can put it underneath there and get it underneath my foot.
All right. Before we move on, another question. Can we swing out? Because we've had the question from Karen off of YouTube. Where do you put your suspension? Because she just finished a king size quilt and kind of fought with it the whole time.
Perfect. Great question. Megan's going to take the camera and kind of make it so she can show the different things as I talk about it. And so right back at the back of my table, as you can see back here, I have two of my clamps that are not very far apart. And you can see that I have left one twist in them. They are stronger with one twist in them. When they come to you, they usually have two of them, two twists in them so that they can, fit them in the box. I leave one twist in them and I put two side by side because that needs that for the strength. So Megan will come over here and you can see those two over there. And this is what I just used last night. This one's kind of a little bit lower. That's okay. It's still supporting it. There's the other one. They still have the twist in it. Now, honestly, that's four of them. They come with four in a set. That's all I really need. Now, I do have two more if I ever decide that I want to put one. If I want to put one on my left side, I can do that. But honestly, having them back there and then doing what we call puddle our fabric, because I told Megan about this last night when she was helping me set it up. She did not realize that. And if you have your fabric all rolled up neatly, that is just it's like dead weight. It's like carrying a baby that's asleep. It's just dead weight, but you want to unhook all of that and puddle it right back here in the back. Just puddle it right back there so that you have the use of it.
So you did it basically at the corners and then like a couple inches in on either the top or the bottom, wherever you were working.
Right. I mean, I didn't put those right there on the very left side of my quilt. I brought it in probably about a foot and then hooked onto it. It just depends on what size your quilt is. Great questions, you guys, because when you puddle that, you want to make sure that you've got it so it's still going to work on your table. And this is why I say a wish table. You got to get a big table because otherwise it's just really difficult to work with because it keeps getting stuck and whatever. Now you may have your machine down in a cabinet. It doesn't quite go as smoothly because that wood cabinet is not going to be as easy to get slick enough, so to speak. Now here's a little hint, okay? They come with these rollers. They come with 4 of these rollers, and you're supposed to take your quilt, and honestly, I just leave it like this. If this was the corner of my quilt, I have it like it's turned back, and then I go around that, and then I clamp that on there. I found that this stuff works great. And this is a product that came out from the R&K company, which is the same company that makes our pink tape. Okay. And so this comes in a set. The whole idea is you can use this around your spools of thread, and it comes colored. So I can maybe make all of my embroidery threads that color, and all of my regular threads this color, and all of my quilting threads this color, or whatever. I don't care what color you use, but I put 3 bands of that on here. You can get this stuff whiter too, but I put that onto my, you can see here I used white on one of these, but I put it on there, and this just grabs that quilt and holds it right in place. So it makes a big difference.
Tracy wants to know, what is the actual table that you've got this on? Because she loves that there's a hole at the back for the extension cord.
This was a quilting table. Oh my gosh, I've had this probably 8 years or so, 6 or 8 years. And you can drill those, and you can actually, I want you to know something. That little outlet, what Tracy's talking about, is right there. You can see that hole that my extension comes through. You can get those things. You can buy them for like $2.50, I think. And then somebody that you know that has what's called a hole saw, and that hole saw will just saw that right through, and then you just pop that in there. So it comes in 2 pieces, the collar that goes around a hole, and then the piece that comes out. And you can get those at Lowe's or Home Depot or different places. So I have had those drilled in to some of my countertops for my computer cords. So yeah, great comment there.
Going back to that tape that you were talking about, Jane wants to know, can you use Cobin bandages?
Yes, I'm sure that's probably what this is. And this is like, you know, when they go to the doctor and they put a piece of tape around like a pad that they've put on your arm or whatever.
Mary Ann wants to know, could you also use that tape for the adjustable ruler so they don't slide as much?
I'm sure you probably could.
Okay. So I'm going to go back through. You guys are asking great questions. So I'm trying to keep up with everything. Norma is making, or thinking about making, depending on maybe how you answer this, a queen size quilt. The blocks are going to be 4-inch squares with 4-inch sashing and 4-inch pinwheel block as cornerstones. The machine will not let her quilt in one piece, so she's going to have to do a quilt as you go. What's the best way to put those individual rows together? Is that with the sashing method?
4-inch blocks and 4-inch sashing. You might try doing it as, like, if it's a queen size quilt, do it in maybe, I don't know, sections that maybe are half the width of your quilt. So like maybe even quadrants instead of the whole quilt, and then put them together after that. That might work. I don't know. It's a tough question. Anybody have an answer? Go ahead. That'd be good.
Okay, well, we're waiting on maybe some of those. Carol wants to know, you had talked about spool weight for your thread. She has mostly Gutermann thread, and she cannot find on that spool where to find what the weight is.
Yeah, I know. I do use a lot of Gutermann thread. So, of course, the one I'm just now picking up is not Gutermann. Here's one. So on this, I agree with you. There's no place on this one but I can tell you if it is, shoot, I know that this is 40 weight, and I can't remember if it's the color of this or because this right here is just that it's 110 yards. It's 100% polyester, and there's no real number. This is a color number, I'm sure. And well, maybe not. This says 2778 or 6. I'm not sure what it is, but you're right. There's nothing on there that tells that weight. But because I owned a quilt store, I know that in the cabinetry on the lines you pulled this out of, the pieces, the rows, it had 40 weight on it. And I've got a lot of that. And this is a very good quilting thread. It's 100% polyester. So I understand what you're saying. One more thing I want to talk about regarding the machine here, and that is when you put this bobbin in, and I know a lot of people who, didn't know there is a right way and a wrong way, but in the case of a drop-in, it rotates counterclockwise. Okay? In the case of a drop-in, it rotates counterclockwise. So when I drop that in there, I have to come around this little piece right here underneath it and make sure I hear it pull in. Now, I know there's no way you can. Well, maybe you heard it. There's a little click, and then it comes behind here and over, and then it breaks off, and then this goes in. You want to make sure that you get that all clicked in. Now, if you have a front loading, as you're looking at it, it's going to rotate clockwise. Okay, the thread is going to rotate clockwise. The other thing I wanted to tell you about the slider, and you got to have a glider. Ours are called gliders. You got to have a glider to do ruler work. It's just a must. You just got to have it. Now, the way we clean these is to rinse them in warm water. Now, if you don't have time to rinse and you're ready for it now, the best accessory in your sewing room is your lint roller. And we're just going to run that across here, and it will pick off most everything. What it doesn't, you'll be fine with until it's time to wash this. Now, what I say your best accessory is we keep 2 of these or 3 of them or 4 of them somewhere in our sewing room so that we've got them pretty much everywhere. And when Megan got finished with that quilt last night, it was black flannel on the back. And you can imagine what that looked like. So she got up early this morning and came over and used probably a half a roll of this to get that all off, but it just cleans it up super, super nice. So always keep yourself a lint roller. No, I don't sell those because every place does.
Which actually, this is a great segue. Jody asked early on in the program, what spare parts would you recommend we have on hand for our sewing machines?
Well, that's a great question too. Spare parts, I don't really know that you need much of a spare parts. Some of the things that get lost easily, obviously, are your spool caps and that kind of thing. If you take care of your machine, a bobbin case, which is usually about $80 to $100, you shouldn't need an extra one of those. It's interesting that you asked that, Jody, because obviously right now you could be totally incapacitated if you had a damaged bobbin case, because parts are scarce, just like everything else in our world. And so, that would be something that would be debilitating for a quilter for sure. But if you take care of everything, I don't think you're going to have problems with that. Obviously, I'm going to tell you a trick on bobbin winding, because a lot of people are using nasty bobbins and they don't even know it. So when you go to wind, when you go to wind your bobbin, make sure that you wind it at a medium speed, no faster. Because if you wind your bobbin at a fast speed, it heats up those plastic bobbins, they expand, And sometimes they even fly off of the bobbin winding unit, or they become so warm and the friction has built up so much that you can't get them off of the bobbin winder. And then that bobbin is totally damaged. And so you don't want to use it again. You want to get rid of it. And I don't have one here, but I used to have one that I would show people when they would come in because they wouldn't believe it. And I'd put two bobbins, one bad one and one good one, beside each other. And the bad one would be like 1/8 of an inch taller because of the fact that it had heated up. And not only does it do that and heat up and cause that damage, it makes your thread stretch. And when it's on the bobbin, you sew it into a project and then it releases. It goes back to its normal state. It relaxes, not releases. It goes back to its normal state. And then it makes it look like you have a puckered seam because you have stretched that thread. So that's a great question. So obviously bobbins are another thing. Make sure you buy the bobbins intended for your machine. I've had people come in and they've got an Elna machine and they're using a bobbin that is not designed for that particular machine. I don't even know why I picked Elna, other than the fact that their bobbins are kind of rounded on the top. And a class 15 bobbin, which is used in a lot of machines, is flat. And so it makes a big difference. So you want to make sure that you have the right bobbins for your machine. I know that's a great question, but I really don't know anything else as far as extra that you could, keep handy, because realistically, you don't want to have enough stuff that you got $500-600 invested in spare parts.
A lot of people are saying like needles and
rippers
and that. So think, and not maybe parts, what other spare tools or things would you recommend they have?
Definitely your needles, and especially like I'm using so many 9014s, or in my case, they're called purple tip, and I probably have over 100 of those, because I want to make sure that I never am without one of the right kind of needles. And, the needles you're going to use most, if you're predominantly a quilter, the needles you're going to use most is when you're piecing with that 60 weight thread, like I told you, you're going to use a 75 or an 80, because you do not need a big old hole. And that's what needles make, is a hole. So you're going to use a 75 or an 80. And then when you're quilting, most likely you're going to have a 90 top stitch for that thread. You may have 100 if you're using a thicker thread, a heavier thread.
Do you ever use pre-wound bobbins for your M7?
Yes, I do. And just make sure that they're designed for this machine, and that the thread that's on them is the thread that you want for the purpose that you are doing. I usually use them when I'm piecing, because I can use my 60 weight on top and use one of those in the bobbin.
Can you reuse a pre-wound bobbin? Or should you?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me look here. You guys were with me a couple of weeks ago. This is definitely one that I would get. I showed you guys those a couple of weeks ago. I love having that, and it's right here in my drawer that's right below. So can you reuse a pre-wound? I would say that would be, you could on this particular type of bobbin, because it's exactly like what I use in my machine. If it's one of those that's like a paper bobbin or something like that, and I know that sounds crazy, I definitely would not use those again. It never hurts to try. I mean, you can, but that looks exactly like the bobbin that I use. So I think that would be perfectly fine.
All right. Believe it or not, we're coming to the end of our questions.
Okay.
Give us more. Lillian asked us early on, when you design your designs with discs and pen and paper, do you always design from the center out?
It depends on what I'm designing. And I would say 99% of the time, yes, I design from the center out. Mainly because when I'm doing that, I've probably got an area in mind that I'm going to put it in. And so I design from the center out. And many times I start and I do the whole center, but then when I start accenting around, I may only do like one side or one quadrant, knowing that I'm going to repeat in some other area. Now we have a class coming up. I believe it is at, I think it's 1 p.m. Pacific time. It may be at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure, but it's on June 23rd. And it's going to be a spring collection set of templates. And I'm using all 5 of the templates that are in that set to do a design. Now, some of you may have seen me do that in another show, and I can't remember whether it was here or whether it was on one of my other commitments that I do. But we are actually going to have a pattern that you can get, and we're going to be doing that. And the first part of that, I am going to show the designing.
Ready for another one?
Sure.
All right. Jan says, is there any way to estimate how much thread ruler quilting will use? Because she started using one of her Gutermann spools, and it only quilted 2 24-inch blocks out of her 16.
I can relate to that. And I don't know at this point, because honestly, if you would have told me last night to quilt that queen size quilt, I would need 7 bobbins, I would have probably challenged that number. But when I was finished, I had wound, because I didn't have any extra bobbins, believe it or not. I didn't have any bobbins here, so I didn't have any options. So yeah, I don't really know a way to say that.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Sue asks, will the slider work on the Janome insert, which is textured?
Yes. And you definitely need to, if that's the case, if that's what you have, you definitely need a glider. It will not be as clingy. So what you're going to do is you're going to put on the corners like a little piece of tape. I actually have had in a teaching situation where that was our that's what we had, was those inserts that come around. And I use this tape, the RNK tape. And we just put a little piece on each of the corners and it was fine. You could use any kind of tape.
All right. Patricia asks, are the garden templates available yet?
Garden.
That's what she says. Knowing the look on her face, Patricia, the answer is probably no.
I don't know garden templates. I don't know what that is. So the spring collection, maybe that's what you're asking. The spring collection is available right now, yes, but I don't know about a garden set. Now, Leonie has a set that she used like 4 or 5 years ago that had a butterfly, and I think there were 4 different things in it, and those are available too, if that's what you're referencing.
Okay. Kelly wants to know, does the Sew Steady table for this machine not extend the whole length of the bed of the machine?
Yes, you're correct. It doesn't. You can see it comes about halfway. So it comes, yeah, that's about halfway. And that is perfectly fine. Because if I didn't have it extending just that part, I would lose it on the other end. So yeah, it works. That works perfect.
Okay, hold on. With that garden thing that Patricia just asked, she clarified the upcoming class you talked about.
Oh, okay. Yes. The spring it's the spring collection templates, and you can get those, and that's what it's called, spring collection. And the class, I don't know if they've got the advertisement out yet, but I know it's on June 23rd.
And another person asked, is that a free or paid class?
I believe it's a free class.
But we still probably want them to sign up so they
get
information and everything.
Yeah, if you sign up, remember, if you sign up, then you're going to get notifications. So as soon as you see that, get on there and get signed up. Because like I said, at the beginning of it, I'm going to show a little bit of drawing. Now, I'm going to give a plug for another place that I do shows, and it's on Sew for Less is the name of it. It's on Tuesdays. But if you go to Sew for Less, they have what they call their VIP group that you can get in. And on there, I did a drawing class like 2 weeks ago, and it would be a good thing for you to watch. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's still up there. Get it before it gets pulled down and becomes a paid for class so that you can watch and see how that drawing takes place.
Your class, where do they sign up for that?
I don't think it's advertised yet.
Do you think she saw it on Facebook page for Sew City, I think today? So
oh, perfect. Then
so
they've got
might be there,
it might be there. I've submitted my information, so they may have already gotten it up. Yes.
Does the spring or the garden set, what we're actually now calling the spring set,
collection,
just to clarify, everybody, Diane wants to know, does that have the bloom template in it?
No, it does not. It has a 1/2 inch. Trying to think where mine is, and I can show you. Hang on here, ladies. I only have to move Megan and the cat.
Which do you think is harder to move?
I can tell you. Here they are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am actually hiding them. I'm the harder one to move.
It's a cool set, you guys. It has the mini Spinifex 7, which is 2 sizes. It has the Paisley, and this is one that I use both ways, so I've got stable tape on both sides. This is the Paisley that is... I think it's 2 inches. Maybe it's 3. I'm not sure. And then it has the larger Paisley in it. So it has 2 Paisley templates. And then it also has the Spinifex 15 size 5.5. Okay. And it has the between the lines 1/2 inch. And in the design, we're going to use all of those. And when I say all of them, I mean both sizes of this and all of these templates here. Plus, we're going to use the spiral crosshair grid. So we're going to use a spiral crosshair grid and all of those templates. Now, I am going to show you a way, if you don't have the spiral, that you can use another piece to get the design you want. So we're going to show you that too. So that's the spring collection, and that's going to be on that class on the 23rd. And remember, even if you don't want to make the project, you know you're going to learn something. I mean, it's just like today. Some of you probably thought, oh, question and answer. I'll bet everybody's learned at least one thing today. Just because, and sharing, information about something that may make your mind go into a different direction. Say, oh, well, that would answer the question I've had on this. So we just wanted to do a Q&A because we've had a lot of different questions. And I hope the one regarding the flannel on both sides, I hope we helped answer that, because I do believe more stable tape will definitely help you with that. And make sure you got your grid glider polished up. If you're not aware of it, we do sell a table and insert polish. It comes in a vial like this and with a little cloth. And so you'll want to get some table and insert polish, because if you haven't polished it up, you're in for a real treat once you get that done. One more question?
So Roberta would like for you to review the issue with the Husqvarna ruler foot not being an accurate size and how that might affect ruler work. She has the Epic 1 and wants to know, she's got the Husqvarna foot, the ruler foot. Should she just go ahead and invest in a Westerly ruler foot instead?
Okay. And you know what? there was a question right before over on the Westerly page, and I wanted to address that. So thank you for asking this, because it's going to take me about 5 minutes, but I want to make sure that you understand. So to answer your question, this is the Husqvarna foot. Okay. Perfectly, looks like it works. It does work. Everything is cool. If you're going to do just free motion, everything is fine with that. Not an issue at all. Where the problem comes in, and I hate to say this because I have the Applique one also. Love the machine. I do ruler work on it, but I do use the Husqvarna foot. And here's why. When I take, I'm going to get something out here so we can see it. If you've ever used your stitching line disc, you know that sometimes when you draw with those, you get kind of a funny little dip in your points. And it's because you're working with a pencil that has a little bit of play in the area of the stitching line disc. Okay. Now this is my stitching line, or it's not stitching line. This is my foot from this machine. It's a Janome foot. I'm going to get a Westerly foot here. So when I put this foot in here, you see there's no play. It just goes around. So when I come into here, I'm going to get exact points. That's my Janome foot. This is my Westerly foot. Same deal. There's no play. I can't side to side that. Well, then this is the Viking foot. I come in here. See that play that I've got from side to side? So that is not a huge difference, but it's enough that when I do the design with this or this other one, I'm going to have perfect points. But when I do this, I may have a little extra, what we as repair people call slop, which means there's just extra space there. So you might have not the same point. So it's not a big difference. But sometimes when you're matching up, it does create a difference. So if I were to come beside a ruler, I may not be an exact 1/4 of an inch away. It may be a little bit less because of the fact that that foot is not quite as wide. So I'm not going to diss it. I'm not going to say don't use it. I'm just going to give you the heads up that that may make a little bit of a difference. Now, the other thing is whoever was on the Westerly page and was asking about the setup on the Vikings. If you go to the Westerly by Me Facebook page, go to the files, and way down in the bottom, because this has been up there for quite a while, you'll see free motion template quilting on HV machines. I think that's the way it's titled. It may even have my name in it, in that title, and pull that up and just make a copy, because that's going to give you the information. In sum and short of it, I'm going to tell you the Epics, the Brilliance, those 2 lines of machines, you have a ruler work setting. Use it. Even if you're using the Westerly foot, use it. You have a second menu that will pop up, or it may be on the same page, that allows you to adjust the height of the foot. Use it. You can take the foot down farther than what the ruler work setting is. And usually it needs to go down farther. Now, that being said, all of the others, the Diamond Deluxe, the Diamond Royale, Ruby Deluxe, Ruby Royale, all of those machines attributes, all of them. You don't want to use free motion because template quilting is not free motion. Its setup is usually the same, but not on a Viking. And I will tell you, it took me a year and a half because I have a Topaz 30. It took me a year and a half to figure this out. So what you want to do is just leave it on straight stitch. Go in and lower your feed teeth, whether that's a button or manually, lower the feed teeth. And if you have a machine that needs to be told not to jump up and down, which is obviously the always having the auto sensor, that's a beautiful feature of the Vikings. It's one of their best selling features is the auto sensor, but it does nothing but cause us as free motioners and template quilters hassles. So what you want to do is go in and turn that feature off. So leave it on straight stitch, turn off the auto sensor, lower your feed teeth, and then you should have absolutely no problem, and you will love it. You will love it. I can remember back when I first started doing this, I would have to edit every single video that I made because I would have my templates get jumped up on. The foot would jump up on my template and I'd have to back out and edit that part. And it was all because of that little thing that I didn't know. So those Topazes, all of those machines, they have nice big space in here. And so once you get that machine fine-tuned, you're not going to have an issue at all. And again, I'm going to tell you, I am an educator. I want to help you get set up. If you're having any issues, just email me. We'll get you taken care of, because it was, I can remember a couple of years ago, I think it was, I don't know for sure, a situation similar to this. And within 20 minutes, I mean, it was like resolved and happy faces. You know, we want to have that so that you're having a great experience. And those Viking machines are beautiful. You just got to use a straight stitch. And when you just use that straight stitch, lower the feed teeth and take off that auto sensor, you're not going to have any problems at all. You're going to be just fine with that.
All right, last two questions. Dale was told that the Solaris automatically adjusts feed dogs. Is that correct?
In some cases, that may be very, very correct. I'm not sewn on the Solaris at this point. But if they don't go down automatically when you set it for free motion or template quilting, then you would want to find where you can do it yourself. In other words, whether there's a button or there's a, because like this machine, the feed teeth automatically lower. The Appliques, the feed teeth automatically lower. Many of them do.
All right. Last question. Maybe. Renee says, I'm having issues sewing a straight 1/4 inch line. Is there a guard I can attach by the feet? Help me sew in an exact 1/4 inch.
Are you talking about in template quilting? I assume that's in template quilting. Well, I tell you what I do is I swear by my ruler. Okay. Many of you have this, and this is my 12.5 inch ruler that you can see has the 1/4 inch lines. And I've put stable tape on the back. And so I just set it on my fabric, and then I can sew up a line that's perfectly straight. So I don't know if that helps you, if that's what you're wanting to do, but I think there's others that will agree. And there's something about this color that makes it easier. So that should help too. All right. Well, hey, it's 1.5 hours of nothing but Q&A. I have enjoyed it. I hope you've learned a lot. Your guys' input and your question has been awesome. And, you know, hey, we're always here. That's what we're about. We will see you next Saturday. I believe we will be here. And have a great week. Make someone happy. Give them a smile. They may need one. So enjoy your week. Have a lot of fun quilting and shoot us your questions if you have them. So long for now.